Well, what a delight to have with us today somebody that needs no introduction. You see him a lot here through CBN News on theDove. He's authored a book called Teavangelicals and the inside story of how evangelicals and the Tea Party are taking back America. What a great honor for me to have with us today David Brody, the next mayor of Medford. Hi, David. How are you, friend?
Hello, Perry. Sorry, I was so busy with my mayoral duties that I was able to take a few minutes here.
Really?
Of course, to talk to you guys about this book. I've heard something about a book. Yes.
Yes. Well, anyway, I just want you to know that the Rogue Valley is where the Lord has bought his retirement home.
Okay. I'll have to visit.
Hey, nice to have you with us. A lot to talk to you about. Tell us about the book. How's it going? And thank you for writing it.
Well, sure. Well, that's the first time I think anybody said thank you for writing it. I think the liberals are using it for firewood somewhere. But no, I mean, look, it's called the Teavangelicals, and it is basically a look at conservative Christians within the Tea Party movement. I mean, if you look around, there are actually plenty of conservative Christians in the Tea Party movement. About 55%, maybe close to 60% are conservative Christian. That doesn't mean they're just evangelical. They could be Baptist, they could be Catholic. They have a lot of different denominations. Mm-hmm. But the point is they are breaking bread with some of these Tea Party libertarians. And so that's how I identify a Teavangelical, someone that believes in the Tea Party agenda.
Now, the Tea Party showed up in thunderous force in the past, and I think it showed up incredibly in the Wisconsin battle. Do you think it's going to show up in November?
Well, I think so. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty confident that it will, but it's not going to happen by osmosis. And we talk about that in the book. I mean, you know, the truth is, Perry, that Mitt Romney, as it relates to 2012 and his chances, and of course, many people think the country's chance, he's going to need them now, these Teavangelicals, more than ever in the general election, more than he did in the primary. He didn't really need him in the primary because Herman Cain and Bachmann and Perry and Santorum and Gingrich, they were all splitting the vote. Now he needs them more than ever. What we know, Perry, is that Ralph Reed's group, I call them, they're the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Mm-hmm. I call them a Teavangelical organization because they have a lot of conservative Christians working for that organization who are also Tea Party members. They have the cell phone numbers, Perry, of 13 million Teavangelical type voters in this country. Cell phones and emails. 13 million. Ralph Reed believes if he can get 3 million of those 13 million to the polls, people that have never voted before, it's game, set, match at that point. Mitt Romney will start writing a lot of thank you notes on Inauguration Day.
All right. Now, doesn't he have to somehow send a stronger signal to evangelicals that he's with them, and in doing so, will that influence his pick of a VP?
That's a great question. Absolutely. I mean, he needs to show a little bit more than he's been showing so far. One of the things he can do is, and I mentioned this in the book, is take a page out of Rick Santorum's playbook, you know, to be able to, in essence, have some sort of pro-family message that weaves the fiscal policy and the social policy together. Santorum was very good at that. He won a Teavangelical type audience because of that. If Romney can do that and make it more consistent in his stump speech, it'll go a long way. I'm not saying he's going to do it, Perry, but that's what he really does need to do to get evangelical or these Teavangelical voters to the polls. Perry, I have to tell you that it's one thing to go vote for Mitt Romney. In other words, the folks that voted for Santorum or Gingrich or whoever it was in the primaries, if they don't like Romney, they'll still vote for Romney over Obama. That's not the issue. The question is, will they bring a friend and will they organize? Because these Teavangelicals are the worker bees, and I think that's the key to it all.
All right. Now, let's back up a little bit on the Tea Party movement, David. Some were concerned that the Tea Party movement really didn't take a strong issue or strong stance on some of the social issues, say the life issue, even the same-sex marriage issue, that they maybe strategically stayed away from that. Can you give me a read on that?
Yeah, we discussed that in Chapter 2. Absolutely, they stayed away from it. When I say they, I'm talking about national Tea Party leaders. They did not want to have anything to do with the social issues. For example, Planned Parenthood funding. You know, we talk a lot about this defunding of Planned Parenthood. Well, you know, evangelicals see that as a fiscal issue and a social issue. Obviously, Planned Parenthood with the abortion issue, but also defunding Planned Parenthood and saving the federal government and, quite frankly, the taxpayers. That's what it really is about. Billions of dollars. But the national Tea Party leaders didn't want to have anything to do with that. And so, you know, this is a good example of how evangelicals don't just care about social issues, they care about fiscal issues, and they see them very much together. You know, a social conservative is typically a fiscal conservative, and vice versa. Not all the time, but it very much happens a lot. We detail that in the book, and that's one of the main reasons why evangelicals are breaking bread with the Tea Party.
Okay, now, the evangelicals weren't real happy with Romney. They're not seeing him as a real solid conservative. There is the struggle over the Mormon faith issue. And so, but you are right. They're going to go with him because nobody wants Obama to be reelected. But can we trust him from what you see? And can the evangelicals get in there and say, yep, he's the man?
Well, I got to tell you, one reason maybe that evangelicals need to show up at the polls for Romney, if they don't want Obama, that is, which I'm assuming most evangelicals don't want Obama. One of the reasons is to keep the guy honest. I mean, you know, if you're going to have Romney in there and he's going to start writing thank you notes to these evangelicals who will show up in droves in 2012, there is somewhat of an IOU here in terms of for the evangelicals. And so, yes, one of the things they're going to be doing is keeping them honest, because the truth is, Perry, we have no idea how Romney is going to govern. Look what's going on in immigration right now in this latest immigration flap with President Obama. Mitt Romney has not really laid out any sort of detailed, that's the key word, detailed plan on immigration. Why? Because he keeps everything very close to the vest. That's the same thing with his governing style. My sense is that we're not going to know many details about what Romney really is going to do until Romney is the next president of the United States. Okay, now, if he reaches out and gets a strong conservative to be his running mate, let's just say for the sake of discussion, David, that it is Marco Rubio, that could bring a lot of the evangelicals more solidly into the camp. But is that a risk for Marco Rubio if, in fact, he joins up with Romney and he goes to the middle after he becomes president? Yeah, I mean, absolutely there's a risk. You know, one of the problems with Marco Rubio as a potential VP pick is that he has not been vetted at the national level. And we're already starting to see some of this vetting process come out a little bit about he got his story mixed up a little bit in terms of his parents coming over from Cuba. And we can go on. And of course, in immigration, there seems to be a little bit more of a moderation tone between him and Romney on immigration. So, you know, there are some issues there. Having said that, I can tell you that within those evangelical circles, what I mean by that is evangelical leaders here in Washington, some of the heavy hitters, they're saying that Marco Rubio would definitely work as someone that would kind of jazz the base. Tim Pawlenty would be a guy that they would be okay with as well. A couple others on the list, obviously Mike Huckabee, he's more of a tier B guy. I don't think the Romney campaign's really looking at him seriously, but evangelicals love him. And Bobby Jindal might be another one as well. So you don't think it's a dead set decision yet on Rubio? No, I don't think so at all. As a matter of fact, if you know, we've heard a lot about Rob Portman. There's been some scuttlebutt within evangelical circles about Portman is good, but he's also maybe not so good. We're not quite sure about him. So it's a little ambivalent on Portman. I would say this, that it would not surprise me. Don't mark my words. I don't want that mayoral duty taken away from me in Bedford. But I would be surprised if Tim Pawlenty ends up being the pick. You know, Tim Pawlenty is a born-again Christian. He's got a pretty neat story to tell, and you know, he's got some serious cred, street cred, as we like to say back here on the East, or maybe they say it out there. But he's got some serious street cred with evangelicals. Well, you come up here. By the way, when you come out here, Mayor, make sure you're wearing your boots. Why, I'm going to step in it? Oh, well, no, but we do wear them out here, and there's more cattle than there is hat out here. So, all right, fair enough. I'm going to remember that, Perry. Okay. You know, what's so interesting as we head down this road, David, is that there seems to be an attempt in this election style, this election cycle, to stay away from the social issues, and that's the one thing that the evangelicals are looking for. And even, I would say perhaps the non-evangelicals that are part of the Tea Party, they are still conservative when it comes to social issues. Do you think it's going to be forgotten, or will they pop up? Well, I think that the evangelicals that are involved in the Tea Party, and we talk about this in the book, I write about this a lot. Look, they're not a one or a two-trick pony. Do they care about the life issue, marriage issue, these big social issues? Sure. But when they join up with the Tea Party, it's not about that. They're not trying to co-opt the movement. I went on MSNBC the other day, and a couple times actually, and CNN, and I said, hold on, guys, for a second. Don't think that evangelicals, just because they're passionate about the life issue and passionate about the marriage issue, doesn't mean that they want to now infiltrate the Tea Party with that type of agenda. That's not what it's about. The last time I checked, evangelicals care greatly about pocketbook issues, about the debt ceiling.
Right.
I can go on and on about fiscal issues. That's why they're joining with the Tea Party.
You know, David, with all of your reporting, can you maybe agree with me that I'm seeing that we evangelicals and even Tea Party members are beginning to look more long-term instead of quick fix?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's no doubt about that. You know, it's funny because one of the reasons I lay out in the book, it's actually Teavangelical issue number 2 as to why evangelicals are joining the Tea Party, is that actually, that reason is a return to fiscal responsibility. In the Bible, we hear all the time about a good person will leave an inheritance for their children's children, that the borrower is not a slave to the lender. You know, evangelicals see all of this in biblical terms. I mean, look at the reducing the size and scope of government and Obamacare. I mean, you just go down the list. The reason they believe that they want to join with the Tea Party is that they think that government is getting bigger and God is getting smaller. So, I mean, I can go down the list from a biblical perspective as to why evangelicals are joining with the Tea Party.
All right, before I take a break, let me ask you this, and you can ponder it, and we'll come back, and that is, it appears that one of the successes, or one of the reasons that the successes of the Tea Party / Teavangelicals is that the establishment of the Republican Party has dropped the ball or seems to be too squishy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem, and you will hear that from people like Senator Jim DeMint up on Capitol Hill, which I've interviewed many times, and that's exactly what he tells me. He said to me he's looking for some new Republicans, quote, that's a quote, new Republicans up on Capitol Hill. What does he mean by that? He means constitutionally conservative Republicans that are going to adhere to the Constitution before they adhere to the Republican Party, for sure.
What a delight to have with us David Brody. His new book is called The Teavangelicals, the inside story of how evangelicals and the Tea Party are taking back America, put out by Zondervan. Let me encourage you to get this book. He does a wonderful job detailing all the issues and how the Tea Party and the evangelicals have linked arms. And part of this is that really the softness, if I can say that, of the Republican Party and the establishment. You know, I was state chairman of the Republican Party here in the state of Oregon for 4 years. I have a son who's a state senator. And we have watched the shift in our party, and we're kind of sitting back somewhat amazed at what's happening. But my problem that I'm seeing here, David, is the polarization within the party. You have the moderates, the establishment that want to kind of, you know, go along down somewhat the moderate road, who are fiscally conservative, socially, they don't really care. And then you have the real ultra-right part of the party that just can't tolerate anything. And in the meantime, the party is falling apart. Can you comment?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's absolutely right. And I lay out in the last chapter some of the challenges for the Tea Party. Look, if you listen to the mainstream media long enough and you actually read the New York Times, I'm just saying, if you read the New York Times, you could take your anti-nausea medication as well. But if you do read the New York Times and get it out there on Medford, well, actually, you'll get it online, wouldn't you? Look, I think what you'll hear is that the Tea Party is not only just radical, but they are just not willing to compromise. And I have to tell you, there is not just a sliver of truth to that. There's definitely some truth to that. They are not going to want to compromise their principles. Here's the problem: how do you stay principled and at the same time fight for, at the same time, be able to somehow compromise on Capitol Hill? Because the truth is, the name of the game is compromise. You're not going to get everything you want. So one of the challenges I lay out in the book is that the Tea Party, these Teavangelicals, need to make the message mainstream. They have to win the argument. How do you win the argument? Well, look, it's difficult, but what you have to do eventually is somehow have some victories with independent voters. What do I mean by that? Independent voters, for example, 70% or more, about 73% of independent voters believe term limits are a good idea. Well, guess what? So does the Tea Party. That's an area where they can really come together. Wow. Another one, a balanced budget amendment. I know it's a long process, but the Tea Party can really start to talk about that and bring along independents on that as well. But the problem was the Tea Party got all hooked up on Capitol Hill with the debt ceiling, and they wouldn't budge. And so if it's going to go down that road, they're not going to grow their numbers. They need to figure out a way to get substantial victories.
You know, a couple things. Some indicate that this turnover in November on Capitol Hill, on the Congress side, both House and Senate, could be one of the largest ever, therefore having one of the youngest, inexperienced group of lawmakers we've ever seen. Some would say that's a problem. Some would say, hallelujah, that's a great thing to have. What's your thinking?
Well, I think you learn as you go, and, you know, young or old, I think right now there's very much an anti-incumbency feel in Washington, and a lot of folks are drinking the Potomac water for sure. There's no doubt about that. Look, one of the challenges I lay out is it's challenge number 2, which is this extreme makeover of Congress. I mean, before I talked about new Republicans, but the truth is nothing will get solved on Capitol Hill from a Teavangelical perspective until you actually have the numbers. You need the numbers. And in the House, in 2010, it was a great start. Over 80-plus freshmen coming in that were somehow, some way, Tea Party, Teavangelical related. Now in 2012, I think we're about to see a different crop. We just saw Richard Murdoch beat Dick Lugar. We see Deb Fischer winning in Nebraska. And so you just go down the line. There are victories coming. This is a slow, methodical process. This is not a 1-cycle, 2-cycle, 4-cycle, 8-cycle. This could be a 25, 30-year process if everything goes the Teavangelical way. It's difficult. No one's saying it's easy, but beyond the last chapter, I have an epilogue that says a Teavangelical utopia, and I talk about what it would be like in a perfect Teavangelical world. And we do it a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of cute. Okay,
so the turnover in 10 and the potential turnover in 12, you would say is primarily contributed to Teavangelicals being involved in the process for whatever level, whatever reason. Will they hold John Boehner, Speaker Boehner, accountable? Because he is establishment.
Yeah, well, put it this way. They tried to hold him accountable on the debt ceiling, and they did up until the 11th hour, and then it all kind of collapsed around them. And so why did it collapse around them? Well, once again, they had some numbers, these Teavangelicals up on Capitol Hill, but they didn't have a true majority of Teavangelicals up on Capitol Hill, and that's the difference. So it really, Perry, gets down to a numbers game.
Okay. Who would you say is the queen of the Tea Party? Would it be Sarah Palin or Michelle Bachmann?
Well, I think both can lay claim for sure. But I think the beauty of the Tea Party is that there really isn't a queen of the Tea Party. You know, it's funny. I asked Michelle Bachmann this about, I don't know, 6 to 9 months ago. I said, you know, you're queen of the Tea Party. She goes, no, I'm not queen of the Tea Party. I know people like to call me the queen of the Tea Party, but I'm just, and then blah, 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 patriotic American and all of that. No one wants to take the mantle of head queen or head king. And you know why? Because they know that they know the Tea Party will revolt against them if anybody tried to have that mantle. The point is, it's so much of an organic bottom-up movement in communities across this country that no one wants that queen or king mantle. I got to tell you, Perry, you might obviously notice around the country now, you're not seeing those big Tea Party rallies anymore.
Why?
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, and the big reason is that people have realized that, you know what, a sign and a Fox News broadcast isn't going to quite get it done in this country. People need to go into their local communities, and I write about this in the book. People are at the city council level, at the school board level. I can go on and on, where Teavangelicals are making a difference from the ground up locally, and then eventually, hopefully, at the federal level.
Well, for the most part, the dominant press, or the secular press, or however you want to look at it, the left press, want to discredit the Tea Party or the Teavangelicals. They say, it's just a passing thing in the pan. It won't be around next go-around, when in fact it seems to be swelling.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Alan West just told me a couple months ago when I interviewed him, and we ran this clip on the Brody File show. He said the Tea Party is like the Blob. Remember the movie The Blob, that science fiction movie? Yeah. You never know where it's going to attack. Yeah. It can morph into different shapes and sizes, and it's terrorizing, not the country, but terrorizing liberals for sure. The point is, it definitely morphs and takes different shapes, but it's out there, and it's just getting started. We're in the infancy here, Perry. We're very much in the infancy.
Now, you don't see this turning into an actual political party, do you, or staying as a movement?
No, I don't think so. And honestly, that sounds good in the sense that, you know, you're going to be authentic and you're not going to be corrupted by any sort of political party, you know, and all of the corruption that goes along with that. But there is a problem with that, and that is that you need to have some sort of structure. And one of the challenges, here we go again in that last chapter I point out, is that the challenge of trying to be one big happy family. Look, when all of these Tea Party groups are on a roll, and they're all working together, a la Wisconsin, what happened with Scott Walker. Look what happened there. They were on the ground. Tea Party Express, Tea Party Patriots, Freedom Works, Ralph Reed's group, Faith and Freedom Coalition. I can go on and on. They all were there. They beat the unions, and it was a fait accompli. It was over. When they're not on the same page, and that happens more often than not, then it becomes a heavier lift. Is the
Tea Party / Teavangelicals handling the media correctly, in your opinion?
Well, this is, that's a great question. I say Marco Rubio, listen to me. I have so many names in my head. Rand
Can
Paul,
you say mayor of Medford?
Rand Paul said something very interesting. He said, look, we're not going to win in the mainstream media until we actually start buying advertising time on stations across this country and start to have the Teavangelical type message come through. His point simply is that until we start to actually compete in the arena of ideas on the airwaves and actually, take their message, this Teavangelical message to the people through media, well, then not much is going to change. Look, it can be done on conservative talk radio, but you're kind of preaching to the choir there. And that would be fine, too, because a lot of folks might get off the couch, actually, that are listening to whether this broadcast or others and put down the Doritos and head to a nearby Tea Party, not rally, but, run for city council or do something. But you got to be in that mainstream media orbit for sure.
Well, David, I want to compliment you, and please, I'm not trying to be, patronizing here, but here's the deal. When I've seen you on some of the national networks as a guest and debating, you've held your cool. And I think that is the key. We have a tendency, we conservatives, to get angry, and there's just a liberal over there, cool as a cucumber, and they come off looking like the smart ones, and we come off looking like radical idiots.
Well, it's funny. I mean, first of all, it's intentional with God being the center of all of it, quite frankly. I mean, I look at it as kind of a witnessing opportunity to make sure, hey, look, we kooky Christians, as a lot of people like to call us, actually have something relevant to say, and we can say it with a smile on our face, and you don't need to demonize us. And so there's no reason why we can't say what we believe, articulate it, and just explain it nicely. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
and so this is what we try to do.
I really think you and your colleague, Dana, Mr. Huckabee, Governor Huckabee, you guys make great examples of how to do it, and I just want to commend you. All right, so where do the Teavangelicals go from here? What's down the road for us?
Well, they're going to basically, what they're going to do is they're going to go into these local communities. I said a little bit about that before, but this is what they're doing. I mean, they are actually starting at the city council level, the school board level. They're going to start to rack up victories there. The key for the Teavangelicals is they have to stay visible with victories. It's challenge number 5 and the last one I lay out in the book. Visible with victories. You start at the local level, and then you move up from there. When you start to rise and you realize, hey, wait a minute, they just were for this. They were able to cut a budget here, but they were able to do it in a way that maybe didn't take someone's Medicare away, because I don't think anybody wants their Medicare taken away. They do want it possibly restructured, but not taken away. This is where they're going. They're starting at the local level, moving up. Eventually, who knows, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years down the road, they might get their act together and actually get it together at the federal level in a presidential election. They didn't do it with Romney, for sure, but it's early. They're coming. The Teavangelicals are there, and they're not a Broadway show, Perry.
All right, David Brody with us today. His book called The Teavangelicals, the inside story of how the Evangelicals and the Tea Party are taking back America. There's a picture of it there on the screen, put out by Zondervan. Let me encourage you to get a copy of this. Check it out at Evangel, Barnes & Noble, and, of course, Amazon as well. And read this book. Let it become somewhat marching orders, a guide, a template for you, and get some good ideas out of it. David, thank you. What a hoot to have you, and an honor, quite frankly. You guys do a great job back there. Hats off from all of us here at Dove TV to all of you back there at CBN. And I can't wait to get you out here. We'll not only make you mayor for a day, we'll put you in a boat, we'll let you catch some real salmon, and we might take you on a hike to the top of the mountain or something.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to take you up on that offer. I'm going to somehow get out to Medford with my executive producer of the show, Dana Ritter, who loves you, wants to say hello to all of you out there.
Great.
As we travel around together. And I will, Perry, I will bring my boots because we're going to need it for hiking and everything else. If I catch salmon, hey, I'm from New York City originally, so can you imagine me? Oh, the only salmon I know is from the grocery store.
No, these actually are in rivers here in the West Coast.
Here I go. I'm going to do it.
All right, thanks, David.
I'm going to fly fish.
Hey, God bless you, pal. Best to you.
Thanks, Perry.